Wow. Hello, everybody. This is completely impromptu. So, welcome. I'm here. I'm at Spitfire. This is my studio. So if I can get a better angle here. Maybe make the seat go down a little bit. I hope you're all doing marvelously well. It is Friday. Hey, everybody. And we are here in sunny Los Angeles. As you can tell from those of you that follow me, I'm not from Los Angeles originally. I'm actually from a small, hello in Portugal, hello everybody that's commenting here. I'm going to try and answer questions, but also keep on point. I haven't done many of these live things, but the few I've had, many people have said to me that, when I'm off answering the questions, it gets a little distracting, which I totally understand. So I'm going to answer as many questions as I can, but I'm going to try and keep on point, tell you a little bit about me, and talk about, of course, the wonderful world of rock and roll that I work in, which is really kind of what the discussion's about. So please, as ever, like and share. I thank you all. There's a great number of you on already. Thank you ever so much. It's really fantastic. I can tell you a little bit about my home setup here, which of course I will, and all of that kind of good stuff. But so the question is, and you probably know this about me if you've followed any of my career at all, I've been blessed to work a lot in rock and roll. Now, rock and roll in England and America are two very, very different things. I realize that. When I grew up in England, if you said rock and roll to somebody, they literally would have thought of, full-blown. They would have thought of Bill Haley. That's not what we called rock and roll. But when I came to America, everybody was like, yeah, rock and roll music. And I thought, what? They're just talking about Bill Haley and Little Richard and all that kind of stuff? No, rock and roll is a euphemism in America for the English and the Europeans watching for just rock music. So, Rick Beato, who's a good friend and incredibly talented and has a wonderful, wonderful YouTube channel, I'm sure a lot of you follow him, posed this question last week: is rock music dead? And I think he specifically posed it, and a lot of the focus from people and even himself at times was on radio. Now, there's a bunch of things that we can say about radio. I'm not going to talk too much about radio because it is, after all, about rock music. I'm going to answer this question. My favorite band is Queen. There you go. But of course, I love the Beatles, but my favorite band is Queen. So for me, I have to be very, very specific. I love rock. I love rock and roll. But radio, yes, radio, pop radio, popular radio, mainstream radio has pretty much moved on from playing any kind of rock music whatsoever, with the occasional exception. When I was a kid, kid, in the 70s and the early 80s, rock kind of came and went in waves. Up through the mid-70s, it was very dominant with pop music in the charts in England. It was very dominant. Bohemian Rhapsody was number one in 1979. In 1975 for 9 weeks through December, over Christmas, into January 76. It was a huge deal. It was a massive, massive hit. But at the same time, that wasn't the only genre that was popular in England. In England, it was very, hello in Greece. It wasn't the dominant genre. Pop music had guitars in it, of course, everything, but it wasn't the dominant genre. And then through the late 70s and early 80s, we had punk, we had new wave, but we also had a lot of disco and stuff coming across. And then there was this, what Americans call the new wave of British metal. And that was your Iron Maidens and your Saxons, and AC/DC started having hits in England in the late 70s, and it was fantastic. But yes, I agree, rock is not dead. But the point is like, it's always come and gone in waves. That's kind of what it's been. So the question is, are we concerned, and I think we must be, because that's why this question is getting posed, are we getting concerned because we just judge our music industry by pop radio? Do we? Because it's not just rock bands that are suffering record sales, drop in record sales. It's everybody. You know, I read this in Billboard last year, I believe, and they talked about Taylor Swift, they talked about Drake, and they talked about Adele. And they basically summed up the article, and I'm going to paraphrase and do my version of it, but they summed it up and said, we're living in Drake, Taylor Swift, and Adele's world. Those were the only three artists that particular year. I think it was either last year or the year before, but anyway, it was in 1 year. They were the only three artists that had sold over platinum. Now, bear in mind, if you go back to the golden era of the 90s, you only needed a top 10, not even pop song, but modern rock single to sell 1 million copies. Kevin Griffin, who I know is the singer of Better Than Ezra, had that one hit with a song that went, wah, it was good living with you, wah. And it was just one hit song on modern rock radio. And he sold nearly 2 million albums based off that one song. Think about that. 2 million albums off of just one song, because modern rock radio really had like a lot of pull in those days. Yeah, somebody just said rock is not just heavy guitars and drums, it's a statement. I agree. There's a lot more to it. We can get into all the subgenres of rock and everything. Absolutely. So that was a golden time in the mid-90s. Now, why was it like that? I think that's something we have to explore. And I think a lot of you are very, very smart. There's a lot of you out there who know exactly what I'm talking about and probably have an even greater understanding than I do. As you know, I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy that has a studio, that makes music and has worked with a lot of bands and artists and has worked my butt off for years. And that's really my only qualification. I'm not an expert. I'm just like the rest of you. I'm out there doing this because I love it and because I believe in it. But it's a very, very important and wonderful thing, rock and roll music for the Americans. It's very important to me because it has been a defining thing all the way through the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and even now the 2000s and 2010s, or whatever we're calling this decade. Because, along with other genres as well, it has been music of protest. And I'm not talking about whether you agree or disagree with particular things. It is a youth culture thing, and I think it still carries on being that, but it has, through various times, always shared that status with other genres. Hip-hop came up in the 80s, and, you know, right from the get-go with Run DMC and Aerosmith and all these bands working together, you know, and then when Public Enemy came out, you know, It Takes a Nation of Millions, all of that stuff, that was protest music, but it had an edge to it that we associate with rock. That when you first heard it in the 50s was Bill Haley. When Bill Haley came out, you remember the stories of the Teddy Boys, all these kids like rebelling and ripping up the seats in the cinemas, in the movie theaters. I'm sure you have read about it, and some of you may be old enough to know more about it than I do. But the point is, as somebody just pointed out, rock music is an attitude. So is it dead? Well, let's go back to the first thing. Yes, largely it's dead on pop radio, with exceptions. And what are those exceptions? Those are exceptions of incredibly good songwriting. So if you, no matter whether you've got heavy guitars, string guitars, mandolins, acoustic guitars, pianos, synthesizers, I don't care what your instrumentation is. If you have an amazing song and that connects with people, somebody's saying Royal Blood, another great band. If you have an amazing song that connects with people, then you will get radio play. The thing is that is the differentiator. That's the thing that I think we have to learn of. And as you know, I'm a huge Queen fan, I've already said that. So I will use Queen as my example, but there are other bands. Linkin Park are a modern band that were able to get success at a time based off largely a sort of Limp Bizkit model. I'm not comparing to Limp Bizkit. I don't want to have a debate about Limp Bizkit versus Linkin Park. But remember, in 2000, when Linkin Park came out, they basically what people would refer to as rap rock or rap metal. They were basically a rapper, a rock band, and they had elements of like what we now call EDM. They had program stuff. I know that they were fans of Nine Inch Nails, so they had some of that program stuff mixed in. So the point is there was a lot of influence in there, and they were young. Those guys were teenagers and early 20s. They were very, very young, and they were absorbing everything around them. Love them or hate them. I'm not going to debate about whether I am or you are the biggest Linkin Park fan. That's not the point. The point is why were they successful? They were successful because they were of the time, and they were able to pull hip-hop and rock, and they had kind of a young, youthful boy band image as well. Let's not forget that. That was part of it. That's what gave them that mass appeal, that they were a bunch of good-looking teenagers and early 20s kids who also were very talented and very driven and understood that rock, the hip-hop, the dance world before it was called EDM, and also the industrial stuff of Nine Inch Nails. They had all of those elements in. So why am I talking about Linkin Park? Well, because they were of the time, and they made music, and also don't underestimate, they were what at the time was called a mixed race band. That's a meaningless statement, and I hate using it and I hate pointing it out. But the point is they were bringing together a lot of different influences, and this is very, very important. I think that we have to look at that. I think that we have to remember that if we're in a rock band, or more importantly, our job as producers and engineers and writers and musicians and mixers. Yeah, somebody's talking about System of a Down there. Very good point. Our job when we're doing all of this is to have ears to what is going on. So if you get yourself a young band and they're looking for inspiration, look around yourself. Look around at the times. Look around at what's going on. Help them, encourage them to speak from their generation to people. That, I think, is the biggest thing that's missing, not just from rock, to be general, but from music. And I'm not talking about any kind of politics. I don't talk politics. I'm not interested in talking politics. I love music. But if somebody comes in and they have something to say that is important to them, get it out. Now, I did a talk a couple of weeks ago, and I was reminded, and I want to post this meme after we've done this on my Facebook. I'll post it on the Facebook page. I asked Jack Douglas, who's a good friend of mine, a long time ago. It was about 5 years ago, and I'm going to name drop, sorry, but I am. We were making the Aerosmith record together, the last Aerosmith record. And every morning, he and I would get in a car and drive from Situate, this little beautiful fishing village, for anybody who knows the South Shore of Boston. And we would drive from there to Aerosmith's studio. And it was about anywhere from 20 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on traffic, 25 minutes. And he had this little tiny VW sports car that was just so much fun. It was his car that he drove down there. And we did this drive for 3 months. 3 months we lived in that place in Situate. And it was amazing. And for 3 months, every morning and every evening, we would drive. And we shared this 2-bedroom apartment. Can you think of a more incredible experience than sharing an apartment for 3 months with Jack Douglas, who produced the Aerosmith, Toys and Rocks, and Double Fantasy by John Lennon, and was one of the 2 or 3 engineers on Imagine? Can you imagine that a greater experience? I can't. It was absolutely wonderful. So basically, that's my long story. So basically I said to him one day, he was talking a lot about John Lennon and sharing stories with me. And a lot of it was very private and personal stuff. But I asked him this one question. I said to him, Jack, I said, well, you know, this is amazing and I love these stories. Is there one thing, and I've said this before, so those of you who have tuned in will maybe remember me saying this. I said, is there one thing that John Lennon said more than anything else? Is there one piece of wisdom that you can share with me? And I'm sorry, Jack, if you're saving this for the book that I know you are actually writing. He said, yes. He said, tell the truth and make it rhyme. One more time. John Lennon said, tell the truth and make it rhyme. So what does that say? I mean, you can take it literally. Literally it works. Literally it means, be honest, say something that comes from your heart and make it rhyme. But what does it really mean to us? It means it's so much bigger than that. It's tell the truth, be honest. Whatever you do, be honest in your work. Make it rhyme means this. Make it so that people want to listen to it. Make it pop enough. And I don't mean like Rihanna or whatever. I just mean make it so that it's accessible enough so that people want to listen to it. And I firmly believe this. You have two exceptions in music. You have incredible prog rock, all the stuff that we love. All of I love Genesis. I love Nursery Crime. I love, Lamb Lies Down on Broadway. I also love King Crimson. I love Queen. I love eccentric, over-the-top metal. I like jazz. I love jazz. I love music that is musician-based. Stuff that you put your headphones on and just get lost in. I fall asleep listening to late 60s, early 70s prog rock. Trust me, I love it. But I also love Queen when they were writing like Radio Gaga and Crazy Little Thing Called Love. I love pop-orientated music as well. And I love Bowie. I love Bowie's whole career. I love Bowie's career from, The Man Who Sold the World right through to the last album he did. I love it all. And to me, listen to a song like Life on Mars. Listen to Life on Mars. That is one of the most complex, non-real key center songs. And yet the whole time, it's a god-awful small affair with the girl with the mousy hair. It's a masterpiece. After David Bowie died, and you should find this on YouTube, Rick Wakeman did an interview with the BBC. I don't know if you've seen it. Has anybody seen it? And he, Zappa is a great example. He did an interview with the BBC, and they were asking about David Bowie, and he talked about playing on Life on Mars. He said that he went to the studio, David Bowie showed him the piano piece, and then Rick Wakeman recorded Life on Mars on piano. He said after it, this is like, what year? People remember, 71? So I think it's 1971. After it, he goes down the pub that night with his friends, and he said very matter-of-factly, he sat there drinking his pint, and he turned to his friends, who are probably all musicians, and said, oh, by the way, I just recorded the best piano piece I'm ever going to record in my life. And that song was a single. That song was a hit. That song was something we all love. So what did it do? It fulfilled this thing. You've got incredible art. You've got Genesis. You've got King Crimson. You've got early Queen. You've got all of this incredible stuff that's super artsy and complex and all this kind of stuff. Or even the opposite, even Kraftwerk, really twisted and weird, or Can, or Henry Cow, for those of you that know weird, obscure music. Some Caravan, some Camel, some you've got or any kind of obscure jazz stuff, You've got all of this living over here. Then over here, you've got Herman's Hermits, Everybody's Going to the Moon. You've got Dave Clark 5, you've got all these super simple pop stuff. You've got all of your Kesha and all of this, although her new song is amazing, but you've got those simple little pop songs, and you've got all of that. Okay? This is what I firmly believe, and you can debate me on it, but I'm not going to change my opinion. It's easy to do the extremes. You can do the technically gifted, spend your time learning to do it kind of stuff. You can do the simple, as somebody pointed out, 6-4-1-5 chord progressions. You know, we can pick up a guitar now and 2 seconds, you know, go, here's a guitar like. That was it. That's the melody. Super quick. Didn't think about that for 1 nanosecond, and it's sort of poppy, and we could play with it for half an hour and come up with a good poppy melody over 6-4-1-5. We all know this, or you could do 1-5-6-4 if you want variation. All joking aside, you've seen the video talking about the chords and how it repeats it, you know? The point is, you can do the pop. You can do the insane, crazy music. You know where I'm going. This bit in the middle is about this wide. It's about this wide. It's when those two things meet. And when those two things meet, you get Bohemian Rhapsody. You get Hey Jude. You get songs that defy logic. You get 7-minute songs that sell millions of copies. And guys like me, you ask me what's your favorite song, I'll go Bohemian Rhapsody or Hey Jude. They're two of my favorite songs, depending on which day it is. And there's so many, there's millions of people. Hey Jude is close, I believe, to being the biggest selling single of all time. I don't remember, it was at like 8 or 9 million when I was a kid. It's like one of the worldwide biggest hits. It's 7+ minutes long. The whole second half of it is na 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 la 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 la. Hey Jude, 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 Jude. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's a 5-4-1 outro, and it goes on forever. And it's one of the biggest selling songs of all time. So, that's the point. So, is rock music dead? Heck no, it's not dead. But history has shown us that we have to swing for the fences, as Americans would say. Sorry for the baseball references. I'm in LA here, and there's a Dodgers fan sitting over there, so, got to be careful with the baseball references. It's all a little sore at the moment. Ow, baseball, World Series. Anyway, getting back on track for the non-Americans who have no idea what we're talking about. The point is like, it's got to be that. It's tough. That's a lot of work, but that defies it. If you're in a band, most importantly, if you're one of us, because all of you watching are producers and engineers and mixers and songwriters, baseball with 2 S's, nice. That's what you need to be doing. You need to be swinging for the fences, as the Americans say, with the bases loaded. You need it. Do it. Look for everything. If you want something to be exceptional on the charts, then write, produce, and make something that's exceptional. Because I firmly believe that if you come in with a rock song and you incorporate and you think like Linkin Park did in 2000, you think like Nirvana did in the early 90s, where they just went against the whole big hair metal thing and just did this grunge punk meets Black Sabbath. I mean, Nirvana was early Black Sabbath and punk music smashed together and created, it's an oversimplification, but they came together and they created grunge, and it defined the 90s. It defined the 90s. It's that kind of creativity and thinking outside of the box. So, and now I hear a lot of amazing bands, but what I'm not hearing enough of yet, and I want us to be, we're all here, we're all producers, we're all engineers, we're all mixers, we're all songwriters, all you guys here, what I want us to do is encourage. Get in there with those young artists. Get in there and encourage them. Help them grow. Inspire them. Listen to all of these different genres. Listen to rock, metal, jazz, current hip-hop, current pop music, country, EDM. Find out what the best DJs are doing. Get that and incorporate it and make it cutting edge. Or go retro. Go and do something like Adele did, where she, through Amy Winehouse's inspiration, obviously, Back to Black. Go back and do something that's just different. Because unfortunately, AC/DC may be one of the greatest bands of all time, and we all love AC/DC. I'd be happy to write and record and play in AC/DC, trust me. But being 19 years old and sounding exactly like AC/DC is not going to get you noticed anymore. As much as we all love it, there's already AC/DC. You know, that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? Let's get in there. Yeah, I know. Thank you very much. EDM, I believe. I can't believe I said that. I say that because that's how Americans define it, and it's okay. Yes, there has been this movement where the older generation that govern the music industry, all of the kind of elite that govern it, call EDM, call all the dance music and all the genres we grew up, they just lump it all together and call it electronic dance music. And yet we all know, it goes back, especially in Europe, in England and the whole rest of Europe, it goes back to a lot more than that. You know what I mean? I know you guys all know that. So I don't want to oversimplify it. So, rock music is not dead. Is it on life support? I don't know. I don't believe so. I think it's there. So, okay, so what we're talking about, the first part of our conversation was this. We talked about the radio, about pop music. So, if you want to be on the radio and it is your destiny or your love or your want to get onto mainstream pop radio, then you've got to play the game. You've got to write a song that will get on there. And you've got to think outside of the box. But I think you've got to think outside the box anyway if you want an audience. Because just being as good as AC/DC doesn't help you. Even if you write a song that's as good as AC/DC, we already have AC/DC. I think a lot of people understand. I don't think corporate radio is promoting... Corporate radio, which it is, and it is corporate radio, and we know that. It is owned by a handful of people, and a handful of companies own the radio stations. It's just that if you're a major label now, this is a fact. Having worked in and around major labels for my whole life, doing major label projects, whether it be the Fray or whatever, Aerosmith, all of this stuff, they were major label projects. I've done that my whole life. James Blunt, they're all major label projects. I've also consulted and done A&R. I know all of this world. The reason why they live and die on pop radio is because it's still the only medium and only way for them currently to push record sales or Spotify plays. Now, that's just because it's not dead. Rock radio is not dead. Radio is not dead. But is it influence waning? Oh, absolutely. Of course it's waning. There's plenty of people that will never listen to the radio like we did. College radio, unfortunately, is really on life support. It used to be, in the 90s when I was in bands, it used to be that you would start a band, they'd put it in America, they'd put it to college radio, they'd grow your fan base on college radio, then they'd switch it over to the lower tiers of the radio stations, then work it all the way up till it became like a modern rock hit, and then they'd cross it over to pop, and if you could, you'd get it into the top 10 on pop, and then you'd be selling millions of records. But like I said earlier, even if you're in the top 10 on modern rock, you could still sell 2 million albums. That's what Better Than Ezra did. They sold nearly 2 million albums off of Good, of the song Good. Mark was just making a comment about listening to Mr. Wakeman talking about Life on Mars. Yes, it's really good. Anyway, so that's where we're at with rock radio, and that's where we are with radio. So if you want that success, once again, you've got to think outside the box, and you've got to give me a song. You've got to give the world a song, I should say, not me. The world a song that will live and die on pop radio. But if you don't want that, part 2. This is why part 2, rock music is not dead. And a big reason. I have a band that I'm working with that we're getting signed at the moment that is a rock band. And they're getting signed to a proper record deal. A real record deal. Like not a, $5,000 or a no money deal that every other indie rock band you know about. It's a proper record deal. Why are they getting signed? Well, number one, They're young and talented. That's a good start. Young, talented, know what they're doing. But they're not going to be like a huge pop radio band. They will have songs that could potentially cross over. But they are hitting it on all of the different elements. They're a great live band. They're a great performing band, obviously. They have great songs. They all play really well. They have very lofty ambitions of being like a huge band, like a Muse, U2 level band. That's what they want. They want Muse, U2, stadium rock size band. And they're very capable of doing that. They're one of the greatest bands I've ever worked with. But a label sees them for many, many things. They see a song that maybe they could get on the radio. But that's not how they're living and dying. They're seeing a band that can tour, that has a potential long career in front of them. Because they're so young, they have this huge career of touring and growing, selling merchandising. Big deal. As well as selling records. But selling live show tickets. So rock music, is it dead? No. Because if you go and see Muse play, I don't know what Muse's last album did. I want to say it did 2 or 3 or 400,000 in America. So not the millions. But it was still made by really amazing producers and engineers. It was mixed probably, I'll have to ask Spike Stent. I'm sure Spike mixed it. So it was not a cheap indie record to make. So it cost a decent amount of money. And it sold that 200,000 to 400,000 records, which is nothing to be sniffed at. I mean, somebody can go to Wikipedia and give us the exact amount. But the point was, it wasn't multi-millions. So nobody was getting rich off of album sales. Yes, that is a Studer 2-inch back there. It's an A80 Mark II. So the point is like, they make money in many, many ways. And record sales is just this part of it now. Now Muse has become a new defining legacy artist, and even though they're still like early mid-30s, they started very, very young. The point is they've built a career, and now they have income from many, many sources. One of which being playing Wembley Arena. Wembley Arena for several nights in a row. Flying all over the world, playing in France and Germany and Belgium and Australia and New Zealand and Italy and Greece, and playing huge shows in front of tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people. And they're able to do that. So record sales is not where they're making their income. So is rock dead? Heck no. Rock is not dead. It's just being looked through this little tiny filter of pop radio. And we keep all of us, we're all guilty of this. We keep thinking that pop radio is the be all and end all. Heck, if you could take a rock band and get a top 10 single on pop, it's going to help them fill out stadiums even quicker. But that's only a part of it. So rock bands can get signed, but they need to be, and by majors, but they need to be fulfilling in many, many ways. They need to be fresh. They need to be exciting. They need to fulfill the John Lennon quote. Tell the truth and make it rhyme. They need to have something that they're saying from their heart. They need to be honest, and they need to have songs that people will grasp onto. Somebody's saying personality. The point is, I agree. What is it we remember about our favorite bands? Let's go for the Beatles, because it's so easy. Yes, enigmatic, somebody said that. Let's talk about the Beatles for a second. The Beatles obviously are a huge influence on all of us. Even if not your favorite band, if you're a producer, an engineer, a mixer, songwriter, if you're in the music industry, the Beatles have shaped the way you make music, the way we listen to music, everything. They're a huge part of what we do. But let's think about it. You had John. What was John? John was originally kind of the Joker, wasn't he? But he also had a dark side. And he had an upbringing where he basically was an orphan. Where his mother gave him up. His mother and father split. You remember that terrible scene in a movie about his life, which is God's honest truth, where he was made to choose between his parents. Imagine being a little boy and having to choose between your parents. Really? Parents? Really? Only of you dads out there? You're all kids at some stage. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that? So there you are. So it's really about that kind of stuff. Somebody just mentioned Roger Waters. Yeah, look about Roger Waters. I mean, like, the point is like, these are these people that have something inside of them that they have to get out. And they have the drive, the passion, and the talent, which you need the drive and the passion to make talent mean anything. They have that, and they're able to talk. They talk on about that. You know, they're able to bring out their personality and speak to people. If you go back and listen to Mother, remember that song, Mother, you had me, but I never had you. That song, listen to that. And then he gets to the end and you hear him crying as the song fades out. It doesn't matter that whether that was in as strong and obvious in every song. Some of the songs you don't hear that. But like Help, remember Help was a song about like being on the road incessantly and not having any time to have a life and being successful and not having to do it. Look at Kurt Cobain. Look at how lost he was when he killed himself. The point is like, that's to tell the truth. That's the tell the truth part. Then the make it rhyme part is the ability to take that honesty and make it just pop enough. Popular. When you hear the word pop, don't immediately go, oh, I hate Rihanna. It's not about that. Pop means popular. My dad, I've said this before, so I'm sorry for people that are going to laugh at me, but in the 70s, early 70s, for those of the English people watching, do you remember the after all the moon landings, Holst's The Planets went to #1 in the charts. And so this album was the biggest selling album for a few weeks in England. It's a classical piece. I mean, obviously someone da 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 ba da da da. You know, there's some beautiful melodies on there that we all know and love. But the point is it? My dad said to me, he looked at me and he goes, "Look, Holst, The Planets is #1." And my dad's a huge classical and jazz buff. And I was like, "Oh yeah, cool." You know, I didn't say cool. I was English. I said, "Oh, that's fantastic, Daddy." You know. And he's like, "Yeah, #1 pop album, popular." And it's the truth. It's Holst the Planets. It was the #1 most popular album. So we have to rest our case. You know, there's been so many artists and styles of music that have gone on to sell lots of copies and become huge influences on us, culturally huge influence on us, that are popular. And it doesn't just mean that pop music. When we work with artists and they go, "That's too pop," look at them like, what do you mean it's too pop? Do you mean it's disposable? I get it. It's not, doesn't have any grit, doesn't have enough for me to want to listen to it to a second time. Get that. But if you're saying it's too pop because you think it might be accessible, think about that. You've got to find that balance. Like I say, it's those two extremes, isn't it? Back to those two extremes. The super catchy, disposable meets the absolutely really hard to get into, but totally weird and wonderful and amazing musicianship. Bring those two things together and find that little piece in the middle where it's like, and that can be on that crazy prog side. It can also be edgy, weird, punk rock, Joy Division, Love Will Tear Us Apart. Is there a better song than Love Will Tear Us Apart again? Go listen to it and talk about a guy that was dark and had issues. So my point is like, there you go. You can go to Joy Division, New Order, all the spin-off of that stuff was absolutely amazing. And it all became massive and popular. And you remember that whole like late 90s through 2000s, how every band sounded like Joy Division? Whether it was Interpol and all those bands. They all sounded like Joy Division. My friend Justin's back, what's it called? She Wants Revenge. I mean, it all sounded like a new version of Joy Division. But the point is like, talk about groundbreaking. Listen to like late 70s Manchester scene and punk bands. And don't get me wrong, the punk bands in England were all stolen from New York and Detroit. Iggy and the Stooges, Velvet Underground. I mean, it was all of the New York scene. New York Dolls, another band that Jack worked with. I mean, we as the English, as Mike Bloomfield very famously said, took American music and sold it back to the Americans. But that goes back to our point about listening to our surroundings, listening, having our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the world. That's where rock music is going to have its stamp. It can't just be hip hop and edgy artists. We as rock guys need to do that. We need to listen to stuff. That's why going back to Linkin Park, it makes sense. They were young guys and they grew up listening to hip hop as well as rock. And rap, rap music, R&B, and of course 9 Inch Nails, industrial stuff, and they put it all together. And it clicked. It clicked. So it's a big, big topic. Oh, so those of you who are watching, will you please like and share? Because apparently the YouTube gods and the Facebook gods only show this video or care about this video if you like and share it. We have to hit the algorithm. So please, there's a good few hundred of you watching, so please do me a big favor. I would really appreciate it. I humbly ask you, please like the video, and can you share it to your different social media platforms. I love this conversation we're having. You guys and girls are amazing, and I believe really, really strongly that you are the future, because you are the future. You help us all. You are out there on the front lines. You're making music on your laptops, on your computers, on whatever you use. It is absolutely on freaking iPads, iPhones, Androids. Please like and share so that the wonderful world of YouTube and Facebook knows that we exist. 1:23 in the morning. You know what, let's see if we can read some questions here and some comments. We've been talking now for 42 minutes. Do you care much about how much rack space you leave between your gear? That's a good one, a gear conversation. Want to talk about some gear? Stephen Wilson's album is modern and new pop, I'm sure it is. Stephen Wilson is incredibly talented. There's some really, really good stuff. There are very, very... thank you, Ian, I appreciate it. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everybody here who's being really important. Really important that you're being so helpful and no gear, just industry knowledge. Sure, I'm fine with talking about industry knowledge, because this is the truth, and this is probably something that irks a lot of people. I've always, like the people we admire, always felt like an outsider. I have. You sitting back watching me, all hundreds of you online now, thank you ever so much. When you watch me, and you maybe go to my very outdated warrenhewitt.com, if you go there, it's like 4 years out of date. You can go there. You can see that I recorded and mixed, and I'm just going to name drop just for some context. I recorded and mixed Alive and Burning by Black Veil Brides. That was like the biggest selling music DVD and Blu-ray the year it came out, like 3 years ago. I recorded, mixed, and co-produced, some co-produced, and mixed the whole of the last 2 Ace Frehley records. I engineered the whole of and mixed half of Aerosmith's last record. I also engineered, did some mixing, and did some production on the first 2 Fray records. I've also worked with James Blunt. My resume is wonderful. I am very, very blessed. So from your perspective, you probably look at me like this big industry guy. Yeah, I have consulted and done A&R with both Epic and Capitol Records. I was involved on that last Beach Boys stuff for Capitol when they made the Love and Mercy. I got involved doing some A&R consulting on that. That was an amazing experience to get any kind of insight and be involved even just a little bit with anything to do with the Beach Boys. Do you know how incredible that felt, just being on calls and giving my opinions? I mean, obviously they could have found 100 other people to do it, so I'm not a genius. But the point is like, okay, so you look at it from a perspective as an outsider. But you know what? I've always felt like the outsider. I've never been one of those guys that was like the 6 guys that made every record. We all know about that. We all know in the mid-90s, through the early 2000s, through probably up to fairly recently, the same half a dozen people recorded and mixed every album in America. We know that. You only have to go and look at the resume, look at all the modern rock bands, and it's like, mute the singer and it sounds like the same band. In fact, with all the auto-tune on the emo stuff, half the time it sounds like the same singer as well. Sorry if you're a fan of a bunch of emo bands from the early 2000s. I don't want to be an ass about this, but see how American I sounded now, I went ass? Did it specifically for the Americans, but I don't want to be an arse about it. I'm not trying to come down on any of those producers, engineers, and mixers that did it. But the point is like, I've always felt like that. I've always felt like the outsider. I've always felt there's been a certain elitism. Even now, I still see the elitism at work, the kind of like, you know, like, hey, you're amazing. No, you're amazing. No, I'm amazing. You know, I don't get that. I don't get that world, you know. It's not what I'm about. To me, it's like getting the band in the room, getting the artist in the room, and driving them and getting incredible performances out of them. That's what we love, isn't it? Isn't that what we're all about? We're all about bringing something out of them, not just generically tuning it and timing it and making it blah, blah, blah. That's what breeds success for a lot of people. But I've always been what we talked about at the end, and I've always tried very hard to do the bases loaded. When I first worked with the Fray, a friend of mine who's a famous A&R executive called Mike Flynn had discovered them. And he and I were sitting in a parking lot of a recording studio working with a girl singer. And we're sitting there, she's in there, and, you know, maybe we're taking a lunch break, I can't remember. And he comes in and he has a cassette, yes, a cassette of this band. And he puts it on in his Ford F-150 truck. This cool old Ford truck. I don't think he was trying to be a hipster. That's just all he had. He was from Indiana. We put that cassette in his truck and we listened to Cable Car. You know, you know, everyone, and you know, over my head. And we listened to that song. We hadn't heard How to Save a Life yet, but we heard that song. He puts it on, he plays it to me, and he looks at me and he's like, what do you think? And I was like, that's awesome. That is so freaking good. I was like, to me, it sounds like you could like it if you like Coldplay, but you could also like it if you liked Roots Americana, because there was no programming, there was no major production in it. It was just guitar, you know, bass and drums. You know, it was, and piano, of course. That is what's so fantastic. Yes, you're right. I interviewed Eddie Kramer recently. Eddie does not come across like that at all. He's very humble. He doesn't have that elitism that we're talking about. And we all know who we're talking about. We talk about the elitism, you know, because our job as producers, engineers, and mixers, you know, is all about getting up performances out of the artists. So anyway, I'm listening to this music, and I remember Flynn goes off to Indiana with these guys, and he starts recording this band, and then he flies back here to LA, and we re-record some stuff for How to Save Your Life, and we do the drums at my old studio, and we do some piano, and then I open it up and we comp some vocals. And when we were comping Isaac's vocals, it was like literally a verse and then another verse and then a chorus from a different take, and then maybe the bridge out from another take. I mean, it was no like word by word comping. Isaac's stuff was just listening and choosing the best performances. So go listen to that first album, How to Save a Life. That's how we comped it all. That's how we did it. So it was all performance based. So I'm talking about our industry, because this is our industry. So the album comes out. Didn't get any reviews. None. Not a single review. Nobody touched it. But they were successful playing local shows in Denver. They had played, what's that show called? The Fox Theatre, I think. What's the one in Boulder? Anybody remember? Anybody from, what was that one called? The one in Boulder? I'm sure you all know. Maybe it was I'm mixing up all my venues. They had played local shows there, and they had played around the sort of tri-state area. Not hundreds of shows, don't get me wrong. No, Red Rocks they played later. That's huge venue. That was when it got really successful. But the point is like, yeah, Red Rocks came later, like a couple of years later, a year and a half later. Anyway, the point is they played like local shows, And they also had got some local radio play on their local Denver radio station. So what did that mean? It meant the album came out and it sold like 3,000 to 5,000 copies a week for weeks, because there was local people that had heard it and loved it. So it wasn't about like, you know, huge radio presence. It was just about the tri-state area, and about success around there. So anyway, then they went to radio with Cable Car, and it started getting a little bit of momentum. People started responding to it, and before you know it, those record sales were creeping up. That 3 to 5 became that 6, that 7, that 8. Now bear in mind, this is mid 2000s, 2004, 2005. Record sales, even though they were dying, they weren't completely dead. But this album started creeping up, and people were responding. And I remember having meetings with A&R guys about projects. I was putting myself out all the time. In the mid-2000s, I met with every label to try and get work. You know, that's what you did. You hustled around LA. You took around your reel, your manager, who at the time was Sandy Robertson, and Sandy would call all these different people and set up meetings, and we'd have lunch and breakfast, and they'd say, what are you working on? And I'd say, I'm developing this band or that band, and you know, I had got a couple signed and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, yeah, and I also did some work with my friend Mike and Aaron, my friend Mike's and Aaron, and we did some work on a band called the Fray. And nobody, not one A&R or manager or anything thought anything about it. They were all like, yeah, it's okay. It's kind of middle America, Midwestern. It's not really going to take off. Meanwhile, this is every A&R, not some, every A&R guy told me this. And it just kind of like fizzled around, and nobody cared. And I hadn't produced that first album. That was Mike and Aaron. I just engineered, come in, done some additional work on it. So, you know, it was just, you know, it wasn't my baby. But the point is like, they just, Thank You, You Found Me is one of my favorite songs I've ever worked on. Enough is Enough, I believe, is a masterpiece if you're a Fray fan. Anyway, getting back on track. So we had this album, and it started selling. And it started selling with nobody noticing that it was selling. Stopping for 1 second, yes, Remain in Light is a masterpiece. Dave Jordan, Brian Eno. So anyway, so this album is selling and selling and selling and selling. And then at 700,000 records sold. They had sold 700,000 albums. They got offered, Grey's Anatomy asked them if they could use How to Save a Life as the season finale closing credits. So remember, there's two facts here. Fact number one. Fact uno. Ein fact was they'd already sold 700,000. That's nearly 750,000 albums. Number two, Grey's Anatomy wants to use How to Save a Life, the song. So what happens? They use it at the end credits. I don't know if any of you are old enough to remember, it's 10, 13 years ago. And they basically, it just gave it more legs. Suddenly it sold an extra 10 or 20,000 records that next week. What did the label do? The label put it out as a single. It goes on the radio. And before you know it, they've sold twice as many records. And it kept selling and selling. Then they put out another single. And before you know it, they sold, I believe, last time I checked, about 4 million albums worldwide. So, what do you think happened next? I'm taking more meetings. More people are calling. They're like, oh, you worked on the Fray album. That's fantastic. It's amazing. I'm like, yeah, I already met with you and told you about the band, but you didn't like them. You didn't think they were very good. Now you think they're amazing because they've sold 4 million records. You know, all of that stuff started happening in the music industry. You know how it is. And then we went and rolled in, and Mike and I did the Augustana record, Can't Love, Can't Hurt, which is still one of my favorite albums I've ever made. So we roll into that album, and we start making that album. And I was getting calls to work on this band or that album and all this kind of stuff, and life was great. I was making great records. So I was very, very blessed. However, everybody I met Every A&R guy I met started telling me a different version of a story that they had told me before. They started saying to me, oh yeah, I was always a fan of the Fray. I knew the first time I heard them that they were going to be huge. For real. I love Ungodly Hour. I'm changing the subject quickly. Ungodly Hour is one of the most beautiful songs. And I really, really love that song. And I feel like that is a one that gets very, very ignored. I think Enough is Enough is Isaac's masterpiece. And I really believe Ungodly is another masterpiece that cannot be ignored. Anyway, back to the point. The point is then suddenly when that success got to be where people could pinpoint it, suddenly everybody started saying to me, oh, they're only successful because of a Grey's Anatomy. Because if they admitted that they had missed the fact, hello there, mate, they had missed the fact that they had sold 700,000 albums, if they'd missed that fact before it came out, you know, that would be a huge deal, wouldn't it? Like, oops, oh yeah, I didn't notice that they were already. Do you have Glenn's number? Can you just text him or tell him that I'm on a call, I'm doing a live video?
You said Glenn?
Yes, Flicker. Tell him I'm on a live video and I'll call him back. So anyway, Glenn Fricker just tried calling me, for those that are fans. All right, this is what I want you to do. Thank you ever so much. Can you please like and share the video? The way it works for the wonderful algorithms of YouTube and Facebook and all that kind of wonderful stuff is that you have to like and share. I'm sorry, I don't want to be begging. Somebody said to me when I said this before on a live video, you were begging for likes. I'm sorry, I'm not begging for likes. I just want people to know that we're online and we're doing this. So there's 236 of you online. Thank you ever so much. So please like and share. There's a great comment. Rock music isn't dead until we stop playing it. So please like and share. I thank you ever so much. You're all so amazing. Like and share. We're going to keep going. Yeah, I'm not begging. I'm just doing my job. I'm doing my job as good PR and good promotion to really, really help get some good message out there. It's really, really all about helping each other. Somebody on Carlos is saying over here that rock and hip hop have a strong connection. Yeah, they do. Look at Blondie. Look at the wonderful Debbie Harry, Fat Five Freddy, she was amazing. She came up in New York, which is one of the most influential towns in the world because that's where punk rock and new wave came from. That's where the English, we went over and stole it. Malcolm McLaren went over there. He managed the New York Dolls for a minute, flew back to England, started the Sex Pistols. The rest of it is history. Do I go to LA to check out new bands? Yes, not as much as I used to, but that's how I started my career. In LA was going out and hustling and meeting new bands and handing out my market. What age group do I market to? I market to everybody. I believe that everybody, the music industry is not exclusive of 11-year-olds or 110-year-olds. This is all about it. This is really, I really strongly believe that you wonderful people out here are what is making this all work. This is an amazing community. You're all here supporting each other and helping each other. As some of you may know, and some of you probably are, we have produced like a pro academy. And inside of that academy, it's all about supporting each other. We really strongly believe in it. It is a really massively important part of what we do. It's stupidly cheap. It's the cheapest one out there. It's only $17 a month. Like today, we're doing the Beatles. In 20 minutes, I'm going to be signing off to go and work with Jerry Hammock and talk about, yes, Run DMC and Aerosmith did join hip hop and rock together as well. To talk about the Beatles, and all of the Academy members and even people on free trials are able to see that 2-hour making of A Day in the Life and Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Thank you ever so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Somebody just said they got their first client from doing my mixing in the box thing. Thank you. I'm blessed to do this, and I'm blessed to help connect people because this is a big, huge, massive, enormous, ginormous, important, awesome thing. We need community here. Most of this stuff is built on people saying, you suck. You know, forums, you suck, bruh. You know, all that stuff. I don't believe in that. I believe 100% in support. Because I don't care, once again, if you're 11 or 111, you have a right to make music. There's people, marvelous. Thank you, Joseph. Very marvelous. Yes, Hot Tin Roof, thank you. Yeah, I really believe in it's all about let's help each other out. So let's get together and help each other out in this community. Let's be supportive of each other. Let's really, really get in there and help support each other. Is rock music dead? What do you think? No, it's not dead. It's breathing very nicely and it's jogging up that hill and its heart's still going. The point is like radio, traditional radio, pop radio is only going to play rock music if it's a massive popular song. I'll say it one more time if somebody says it's sleeping. Rock music is not dead. There is plenty of income for rock music out there, but it's based off not popular radio anymore. It's not based on pop radio. It is based on merchandising. It's based on selling t-shirts. It's based on selling brand awareness. Get your brand out there. Like I said, I have a rock band. I'm getting signed to a big label in the moment. And what is different about it? They are a young, enthusiastic, honest, incredibly talented young band that have their ear to everything that's going on. They bring in tons of influences. And our job as producers, engineers, songwriters, and mixers is to bring that out of our artists. And if you're an artist and you're watching this, I encourage you to listen. To listen. Let's listen to each other. Let's listen to what's going on. Let's listen to the political climate. Say something. Say something that means something. Earlier, somebody talked about Roger Waters. And of course, we talked about John Lennon. These are people that we love, but these are people that had messed up upbringings. But many of us, many of you, many of us have had messed up upbringings. What is a normal upbringing? But what is the difference between Roger Waters and John Lennon and David Bowie and all these guys? They were able to articulate. They were able to bring out their art and then, as John Lennon said, tell the truth and make it rhyme. They were able to bring out of their art, Neil Young as well, they were able to bring out their art and tell it in an honest way. Somebody said, this is your chance to be valued as human beings. Exactly. And you know what? If you're making good, honest music where you're telling the truth and making it rhyme, as John Lennon said, if you're doing that, talk about it. Isn't that fulfilling? You know, I'm making a sort of solo record in short periods of downtime at the moment, like 20 minutes here and there, working on guitar riffs and all this kind of stuff. And I do that when I can. It's fulfilling for me, but is it the most important thing? No, I mean, there's so much to what I do and what I love. You know, it's just important for us to just be true to yourself. Be honest, you know, do something that you find fulfilling, because people will believe that. I really do, strongly, you know, I really strongly believe that if you are honest in what you do, people will gravitate towards you. So write about what touches you, but you've got to write about it in a way that's accessible. That's the fine balance, isn't it? Write about something that's accessible, something that you can relate to. The truth, as Bilu just said there. The truth. Write the truth. But don't alienate people. Bring people in. You want to tell something. You want to be Roger Waters and write The Wall, arguably one of the greatest masterpiece rock frickin' albums of all time. A double album of just pure genius. Whether you're a Pink Floyd fan or a Run DMC, Linkin Park, Kesha fan, it doesn't matter. Kesha's latest song tells the truth, tells what her experiences, and it is resonating with lots of people. I can see people responding and reposting it going, thank you for saying this. You may not be a Kesha fan, but I've met people that are not pop music, like disposable pop music fans, and they are loving it. They are loving it, and it's so wonderful. So I think that that's a really massively important thing. people think that nobody cares, that they care about people. I think it's important. I think that if you can bring your art out and express yourself in an accessible way so people understand you, you are helping people. Because what's going to happen is, and I say this all the time, this is another really, really good point. The great thing about social media and the great thing about the world we live in, the YouTube, Facebook world, the great thing about this is that people now have a way to talk to many, many people. We have a way that we can express ourselves to an enormous amount of people. Because you can be, somebody just says, I'm an outcast and nobody understands me, and they're laughing. But the point is, and I get it, and somebody's talking about an Adele, I get it. Adele is not a classically beautiful girl. I think she's very pretty and very beautiful. But she doesn't fulfill the model, skinny kind of look, does she? But she says songs that are so honest and so believable that people buy her music. They listen to her music in millions on Spotify because she speaks to many, many people. She's a great example, you know. That is what it's, that's what it's all about. We need to find music like that. We need to cultivate it. We need to, as producers, engineers, and songwriters and musicians, mixers, that's what we should be all about. Because we are driving this, and then I want us all to be so supportive of each other. Right, John Lennon was a genius, and he did have a gift. I agree with your comment there. But also, good morning. I also agree that he grew into it, didn't he? He went from like, I want to hold your hand, a sort of childhood innocence of like teenage innocence of like, they were the first boy band. I mean, can we not argue that? It really was the first boy band. The Beatles were a boy band. They all had mop top haircuts, they all wore suits, and they all were young and cute. They were teens and early 20s. From George Harrison to John Lennon, they were super young, a boy band, and they wrote songs that everybody could, I want to hold your love, love me do, you know I love you. I mean, every phrase rhymed. I'm not saying it has to rhyme, but you understand my point. They were a boy band, and so they were able to speak to a lot of people. And then what happened is it morphed, didn't it? They grew as musicians. They went out and did what we were talking about earlier. They went out and they sought out other genres. They started listening to other bands. The Byrds became an influence. The 12 Strings. They started swapping stuff. The Beach Boys. We all know the story of Paul McCartney going over and listening to what Brian Wilson did and then playing Sgt. Pepper. But the Pet Sounds, when that came out, what a masterpiece. The Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. It is a masterpiece. So they were absorbing the culture, the time, the Vietnam War, the early gun massacres, like Happiness is a Warm Gun. These were all making statements. Whether you agree or not is not important. It doesn't matter about the politics. It doesn't matter if you agree with one person's thing. The point is whatever your point of view is, whether it be left, right, middle, pink, purple, orange, green, whatever, it doesn't matter. If there's a truth and an honesty to what you say, then people will respond to you. So tell the truth, make it rhyme. Syd Barrett versus Pink Floyd versus Roger Waters, love it all. So anyway, the point is they grew into artists. They did everything that we want. They were able to listen to their surroundings. They were able to take in all of the stuff. So what do we do now? We need to listen to our political climate. We need to listen to how we feel. You need artists to look at introspectively and see what their upbringing was and how they interact with people and their relationships with others. Let's do that. Let's get in there. Let's encourage. We're producers, we're engineers and mixers. That is how rock music is not going to be dead when it comes to creativity. And then we have to not worry about pop radio unless, if you want that pop radio success, you have to swing for the fences. You need it all. You need something that's unique and you need something that's going to speak to people. But the lucky thing is, and the reason why pop music is not dead, is you don't have to have a pop song to have success. There's many ways to measure success. The great thing is, like we were talking about with bands like Muse, who did establish themselves on the radio, but they're now in a place now, and a lot of bands are like them. Like some of the metal bands, they sell tens of thousands of albums, but they play massive sold-out shows. So you just need that branding, you need that honesty, you need to be out there working your schnizzle off, you need to get out there and play shows and sell merchandising. Somebody earlier was talking about selling t-shirts and CDs. You just need to get out there and get that stuff going. That's what it's all about. Let's get out there. Rock is not dead. I don't even think it's on life support, but it's just that honesty. We have to know, if you want to play the game and you want to play the radio game, play the radio game. But you got to swing for the fences. You need the art, and you need the pop, you need the melody, the harmony. You need tell the truth and then make it rhyme, and it needs to come together in the middle. And that's tough, but it's a challenge, and we should do that. That should be something we should do. Okay, I think we're running out of time here. It's 5:53, and I have to get ready. I have to get ready, and because we're doing the Jerry Hammock Beatles. In half an hour, we're going to do the Beatles talk. We're going to talk about Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds and A Day in the Life. So if you're an Academy member, any Academy members watching here, don't forget to tune in. There should be several emails coming to you. So go in there. I would love to do a contest of writing a pop song. It's a great idea. So we've talked about it. So go in and check. Academy members, if you're not an Academy member, you could probably join in the next 20 minutes and get an email and get a link. I hope you can get that all very soon. Anyway, thank you ever so much. Please like and share before you go so other people know this video's up. Please like and share on Facebook, YouTube. Just like and share it. Let's get people talking about this. Let's know. Let's be supportive. Please like and share. You all rock. I feel very, very blessed that there is this amazing community, that there's so many people here that want to help each other. So please like and share. Let's get this out there. Let's help each other. Rock is not dead. It's not even on life support, but we have to understand what our business is about. Somebody just said My Chemical Romance was very good. I agree. My Chemical Romance, I had a lot of hope for them. I'm very, very sad that they broke up, because I felt like that the Black Parade album sort of referenced Queen in a really good way, had some modern elements, and I really felt like that was what the kind of stuff that really would have helped rock. That's just my opinion. I love that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's amazing. So please, before we sign off, can you please like and share? I really appreciate it. Thank you for all the amazing comments. Please continue to leave great comments. Bye, Hot Tin Ruth in Edinburgh. Love Edinburgh. What a beautiful city. And frickin', I know I say this always about the Scottish and the Irish and the Welsh, but my mother's Irish. I got a lot of Celts and Gaelic and stuff. And, you know, the Scottish have got like one of the highest IQs in the whole of Europe. Does anybody know that? It's true. They've got this stupidly high IQ. They're like the smartest people on average in the whole of Europe. Isn't that weird? It's the truth though. And we have so much great culture in the United Kingdom. It is incredible. And then the British Isles and all of the islands. I mean, the Irish, talk about the Irish for literature and music. Wow. I think per capita literature, they blow everybody out. You know, James Joyce, I rest my case. You know what I mean? So much. Oscar Wilde, don't forget. Oscar Wilde was Irish. You know. Anyway, I love it. So that is what's so wonderful. Look, we've got somebody saying goodbye from Chicago. This is amazing. We have this wonderful world that comes together here. Everybody from all over the world. Isn't this absolutely incredible? Let's be supportive, help each other, like and share. I'm going to leave it up for 30 more seconds so you can like and share across the world. You rock. Thank you ever so much. I'll tell Glenn F you. Yes, I'll go and talk to him in a minute. He was just calling me from the other line. Thank you ever so much. I'm going to start signing off when I can finish it here. Oh, stop. Have a marvelous time recording and mixing. Thank you. Have a marvelous time. You all rock. Please like and share.